course. Here is the text with corrected punctuation, along with a title, headline, and description for YouTube. Title: Shattered Vows. Headline: My wife of 12 years came home in a red dress. What happened next destroyed everything. YouTube description: After 12 years of what I thought was a happy marriage, my world collapsed in a single evening. It started with a red dress, a vague excuse, and a coldness I'd never seen in my wife's eyes. The confrontation that followed unraveled a devastating secret she had been hiding for months. This is the raw, unfiltered story of discovering a deep betrayal, losing the life I had built, and finding the strength to walk away from the wreckage to start over. It's a journey through heartbreak, resilience, and the unexpected peace that can be found on the other side of ruin. Translation/перевод. Название нарушенная клятва. Заголовок. Моя жена после 12 лет брака пришла домой в красном платье. То, что случилось потом, разрушило все. Описание для YouTube. После 12 лет, как я думал, счастливого брака, мой мир рухнул в один вечер. Все началось с красного платья, туманного оправдания и холода в глазах моей жены, которого я никогда прежде не видел. Последовавшая за этим ссора раскрыла ужасную тайну, которую она скрывала месяцами. Это откровенная история без прикрас о раскрытии глубокого предательства, потере жизни, которую я построил, и обретение сил уйти от руин, чтобы начать все сначала. Это путешествие через разбитое сердце, стойкость и неожиданное умиротворение, которое можно найти по ту сторону разрухи. 12 years. 12 years of marriage, of love, of shared dreams and struggles. I never once imagined that I would sit here, staring at the walls of an empty house, trying to process the betrayal that shattered everything I believed in. Started like any other evening. I had just finished a long day at work, the kind that leaves you exhausted but content, knowing you're providing for your family. I walked into our home, expecting the familiar comfort of my wife's presence, the warmth of our shared life. Instead, I found her dressed up. Heels, a red dress I hadn't seen in years, makeup done just a little too perfectly. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't sadness. It was something else, something colder. I have plans tonight, she said casually, grabbing her purse. I frowned. Plans with who? She hesitated just a little too long. Just a friend. That was the moment my stomach twisted. I knew every one of her friends. We had been together for over a decade. There were no secrets between us, or so I thought. Which friend? I pressed, my voice even, though I could feel the unease crawling up my spine. She sighed, as if she were annoyed that I was even asking. It's just dinner. I'll make it up to you later. Her words hit me like a brick wall. Make it up to me later? Like this was a missed appointment, not a blatant slap in the face to everything we built together. Are you seriously going on a date? I finally asked, my voice quieter now, the weight of reality settling on my chest. She laughed, but it was hollow. It's not like that. I just need to. I cut her off. If it's not like that, then why couldn't you tell me right away? Silence. A charged, suffocating silence. That was all I needed to know. I wouldn't do this if I didn't think it was okay, she finally said, her tone defensive. We've been stuck in the same routine for years. I need to see what else is out there. I stood there, stunned. My wife, the woman who once vowed to love me forever, was telling me plainly that she was looking for something better, that our life, our marriage, I wasn't enough. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. You do realize this isn't something you can just make up to me later, right? She rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. Overreacting, right? She grabbed her keys and walked out, leaving me standing in the doorway, frozen in place. I wanted to believe she'd come back home and say it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd walk through that door and tell me she realized she had made a mistake. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning, and I had no idea just how much worse it was going to get. That night, sleep came. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of our home, a silence that had never felt so loud before. The sheets next to me were untouched, cold. Every minute that passed felt like an hour, and with each moment, my mind raced through the possibilities of what she was doing, where she was, and worst of all, who she was with. I wanted to believe she was just sitting in some restaurant, sipping a glass of wine, having a meaningless conversation with a friend who meant nothing. But my gut told me otherwise. You don't dress like that for something meaningless. You don't hesitate before answering if there's nothing to hide. The next morning, the sound of the front door opening jolted me from whatever restless state I had drifted into. I didn't rush to meet her. Instead, I stayed in bed, listening. The soft clicking of her heels against the wooden floor, the rustling of fabric as she slipped off her coat. She didn't come straight upstairs. That alone told me everything. After what felt like an eternity, I heard her make her way to our bedroom. I kept my eyes shut as she walked in, as if pretending to be asleep would somehow shield me from whatever expression she wore on her face. She hesitated for a moment, then quietly slipped into bed beside me. Her body was turned away, the space between us a canyon that neither of us dared to cross. I opened my eyes, staring at the wall. My chest was tight, my throat dry, but I forced the words out anyway. "How was your dinner?" She stiffened. Even in the darkness, I could feel it. "It was fine." Her voice was quiet, almost careful, as if she were afraid that saying too much would unravel whatever story she had prepared. I turned onto my side, finally facing her. "Where did you go?" A beat of silence. "The bistro on 5th. A lie. I knew it before she even said it. That restaurant was our place. She wouldn't have dared to take someone else there." "Who were you with?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She exhaled sharply. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" Asking my wife where she was all night, trying to understand why she felt the need to step outside our marriage. She didn't answer. Instead, I waited. She sighed, finally rolling over to face me. "Look, I know this is hard for you to understand, but I just needed to do something for myself. That doesn't mean I don't love you." I let out a bitter laugh before I could stop myself. "You don't go on dates with other men when you love your husband." Her jaw clenched. "It wasn't a date. You keep saying that, but you're not telling me what it was." She looked away, biting her lip, as if debating whether or not she owed me the truth. "I just needed to talk to someone." Talk. That was what she was calling it. I sat up, running a hand through my hair. "So, if I called the restaurant, they'd tell me you were there?" Her breath hitched just slightly, but enough. "You're being paranoid," she said quickly, too quickly. I stared at her, at the woman I had spent over a decade loving, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. She wasn't panicked because she felt guilty. She was panicked because I was catching on to her lies. For the first time, I saw her clearly. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This was a choice. She had chosen to go out. She had chosen to lie. And now, she was choosing to cover her tracks instead of coming clean. I felt something inside me harden. "I warned you," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I told you this wasn't something you could make up to me later." Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. I stood up, grabbing my phone from the nightstand. "I'm going to find out the truth, whether you tell me or not." For the first time since she walked through that door, real fear flashed in her eyes, because she knew whatever came next, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it. I didn't sleep after that, not even for a second. I stayed in the living room, staring at my phone, my thoughts spiraling in every direction. The weight of her lies pressed down on me like a physical force, suffocating, relentless. I wanted to believe I was overreacting. I wanted to believe this was all in my head. But deep down, I knew better. Morning crept in slowly, the first hints of daylight stretching across the sky, but I was already wide awake. I heard the soft creak of the bedroom door upstairs, the hesitant steps of my wife making her way down. When she finally appeared in the doorway, she hesitated, her eyes flicking to me. I didn't speak. She didn't either. The tension between us was thick, a silent standoff that neither of us wanted to break. But I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. Finally, she cleared her throat. I was going to make coffee. Do you want some? She was pretending nothing had happened, acting like this was just another day, like I hadn't caught her sneaking back into our bed after an entire night of deception. I set my phone down, leaning forward slightly. You never answered my question last night. She swallowed. What question? I studied her face, every flicker of emotion, every slight hesitation. Where were you? Her fingers curled around the edge of the kitchen counter. I told you, I went out to talk to a friend. Which friend? The pause was too long. Just someone from work. Name. She let out a soft, forced laugh. Why are you interrogating me? I didn't flinch. Because my wife of 12 years went out dressed like she was meeting a lover, disappeared for the entire night, and came home acting like I should just let it go. Her jaw tightened. I don't have to explain myself to you. That was it. The final crack in the foundation. The words were sharp, decisive, an admission without actually saying the words. I felt something inside me shift, something irreversible. I stood up slowly, never breaking eye contact. You do if you expect to stay married to me. Her lips parted slightly, caught between anger and panic. Are you threatening me? I shook my head. I'm asking you one last time. Be honest with me right now. For a split second, I thought she might. I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, of hesitation, of remorse. But it was gone as quickly as it came. She straightened, her expression hardening. I don't want to fight about this. I need to shower. And just like that, she walked away. I stood frozen in place, my mind racing. She wasn't even trying to come up with a believable excuse anymore. She was shutting me out completely. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. My heart was hammering in my chest as I opened a private browser and searched the restaurant she had claimed to be at. Within seconds, the reservation line popped up. I tapped the number before I could second-guess myself. A crisp, professional voice answered. Thank you for calling the bistro on 5th. How can I assist you? I hesitated for only a second. Hi, I'm just checking. Was there a reservation under the name Evelyn last night? A brief pause. Let me check for you. I clenched my jaw, listening to the sound of keys clicking on the other end of the line. Then, no, sir. We didn't have a reservation under that name last night. I felt my stomach drop. Are you sure? Yes, sir. No reservation under Evelyn for last night. Can I assist you with anything else? My mouth was dry. No, thank you. I ended the call, my entire body going cold. She had lied. Not just misled me, not just twisted the truth. She had boldly lied, knowing I might find out, knowing she was playing with fire. I stared at the phone in my hands, my fingers tightening around it. The trust one had spent 12 years believing in had crumbled in a matter of hours, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to fix it. When she came back downstairs, freshly showered, she had a towel wrapped around her head, her expression unreadable. She stopped when she saw me, probably expecting me to have cooled down. I didn't say anything. I just held up my phone. I called. Her face barely flickered, but I saw the tiny shift in her eyes, the slight widening, the way her shoulders tensed. I don't know what you're talking about, she said quickly. I let out a breath, shaking my head. You weren't at the restaurant. Silence. Then she laughed. It was forced, nervous. Wow, you actually called. I didn't respond. She crossed her arms. This is insane. You're checking up on me like I'm some criminal. You are acting like one. My voice was quiet, controlled. You lied to my face. Do you have any idea what that does to me? Her eyes flashed with something close to guilt, but instead of apologizing, she went on the attack. You don't trust me. That's the real problem here. You're paranoid. You're controlling. I shook my head. No, don't turn this around on me. You lied. You disappeared all night. And now, instead of coming clean, you're trying to make me the bad guy. She looked away, lips pressed together. I can't do this right now. She turned to leave, but this time I didn't let her escape. Evelyn. She froze. I took a slow step forward. If there's something you need to tell me, say it now, before this goes too far. A pause. A long, excruciating pause. Then finally, She turned back to me. But instead of remorse, instead of regret, her expression was unreadable. And that was the moment I knew whatever she was about to say next, it was going to break me. There's a moment in every person's life where time just stops. When everything you thought was real, everything you thought you knew, gets ripped apart like paper in the wind. That moment happened for me in the middle of our kitchen, standing across from the woman I had built my life around. Evelyn stared at me, her hands gripping the edge of the counter like she needed to hold on to something. Her lips parted slightly, her breathing uneven, and I could tell whatever she was about to say, it was going to destroy me. I didn't want to hurt you, she finally whispered. That was all it took. That sentence. A simple string of words so often used as an excuse for the worst betrayals. I felt my stomach tighten. You didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. Then why did you go behind my back? Why did you lie? She squeezed her eyes shut, as if bracing for impact. Because I didn't know how to tell you. I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a bitter laugh. Tell me what, Evelyn? Her fingers clenched. I've been talking to someone. For a while. Felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. A dull ringing filled my ears, my thoughts scattering in every direction. Talking, I echoed. She nodded, not meeting my gaze. We met months ago at a networking event. He made me feel something I haven't felt in years. My hands curled into fists at my sides. So what? I don't make you feel anything? She flinched. That's not what I meant. Then what do you mean? My voice rose, the frustration, the betrayal, bubbling up inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds an awful lot like you just decided our marriage wasn't enough for you anymore. She looked down. It wasn't planned, Grover. I didn't wake up one day and decide to. You didn't wake up and decide to betray me, right? You just let it happen, piece by piece, until you were sneaking out on dates and hoping I wouldn't notice. She exhaled shakily, shaking her head. It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like. She hesitated for a fraction of a second too long, and in that tiny space of time I saw it. The truth she was too afraid to admit. I took a step back, my chest rising and falling rapidly. Did you sleep with him? Her eyes widened. Grover, did you sleep with him? Silence. That was all the answer I needed. I turned away, my mind spinning, my breath shallow. The kitchen felt too small, the walls too close. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get out of this house before I said something I couldn't take back. She reached for me, her voice desperate. Grover, please, I yanked my arm away, stepping back like her touch burned me. Don't you dare touch me right now. Tears welled in her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Well, congratulations, Evelyn. You failed. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I wanted to feel something. Anger, rage, hate. But all I felt was numb, like the part of me that still believed in her had been ripped out, leaving nothing but an empty space behind. I turned and walked toward the front door. Where are you going? She called after me, panic creeping into her voice. I paused for half a second. I don't know. And then I walked out. I didn't get in my car. I didn't even grab my keys. I just walked, past the driveway, past the neighbor's house, past the street where we used to take evening strolls together. The world around me blurred, my thoughts a tangled mess of pain and disbelief. How had it come to this? How had the woman I built my life with turned into someone I couldn't even look at? I should have seen the signs. The distance between us, the coldness in her voice some nights, the way she started dressing differently, caring more about her appearance. I had chalked it up to stress, to work, to life getting in the way. But it was him, some nameless, faceless man who had walked into her life and decided my wife was his for the taking. And the worst part? She let him. I walked until my legs ached, until the sky started to darken. The realization hit me like a truck. There was no going back from this. Even if she begged for forgiveness, even if she swore it meant nothing. Because the truth was simple. She had already chosen him. I don't know how long I walked that night. Maybe hours, maybe days in some mental sense, because time didn't feel real anymore. My feet kept moving, my thoughts kept spiraling, and the weight in my chest wouldn't let up. Everything felt off, like I had stepped into someone else's life, some other poor bastard's nightmare. I kept replaying it in my head. Her hesitation, the way she flinched at my questions, the way her eyes darted to the floor when I asked if she had slept with him. Silence is an answer, and hers had been deafening. By the time I made it back home, the house was dark. It was late, but I had no idea how late. I didn't check my phone. I barely remembered leaving without it. My mind was too cluttered with the weight of everything to care. As I stepped inside, the air was thick, like something had shifted while I was gone. The kitchen light was still on, casting a dim glow across the hardwood floor. She was sitting at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched tea. When she saw me, her expression wavered between relief and fear. "You came back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I ignored the ridiculousness of that statement. Where else was I supposed to go? It was still my home, or at least it had been. I stood in the doorway, looking at her, really looking at her. The same woman I had spent over a decade with, shared countless memories with, built a life with. And yet, sitting there under the dull kitchen light, she felt like a stranger. She exhaled shakily. "I thought you weren't coming back." I let out a humorless chuckle, running a hand down my face. "You really thought I'd just disappear?" She looked down. "I don't know." That answer stung more than I wanted to admit. I pulled out a chair but didn't sit. I leaned against it instead, keeping my distance. "Are you ready to tell me the truth now?" She tensed. No lies, Evelyn." I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. "I already caught you in one. You weren't at the bistro. I called them." Her eyes widened just slightly before she masked it with faint annoyance. "You called them?" I scoffed. "That's what you're upset about?" "That I checked." She pressed her lips together, looking away. I could see the gears turning in her head, scrambling for something to say that wouldn't sound like another lie. I let the silence hang between us. Then, finally, she sighed. "I was with him." There it was. The admission. I didn't react, even though my whole body screamed for one. "For how long?" I asked, my voice steady. She swallowed. "A few months." I closed my eyes briefly, inhaling through my nose. A few months. That meant this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment mistake. This wasn't a drunken lapse in judgment or a one-time slip. This was calculated. This was thought out. This was a second life she had been living behind my back. I let out a breath. "So, when were you planning on telling me?" She hesitated. I wasn't. That broke me more than anything. I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Well, so you were just going to keep sneaking around, hoping I'd never find out?" She shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't want to hurt you." I snapped my head toward her. "You didn't want to hurt me?" I repeated, disbelief dripping from every word. "Do you even hear yourself? You were hurting me, Evelyn. And you knew you were. Every single time you met him. Every time you lied to my face. Every time you came home and acted like nothing was wrong." Her hands trembled slightly as she set her mug down. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like," I challenged. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She had no explanation, no excuse that would make this right. Because there wasn't one. I stepped back, shaking my head. "I don't even know who you are anymore." She let out a shaky breath. "Grover, I held up a hand. "No, just don't." I turned and left the kitchen. She called after me, but I didn't stop. I walked upstairs, straight to our bedroom. Our bedroom, which now felt like a crime scene. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, my movements robotic. I wasn't even thinking, just acting, stuffing clothes inside, grabbing essentials. My mind was fogged over with exhaustion and raw, unfiltered emotion. By the time she reached the doorway, panic was clear in her voice. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. I zipped the bag shut, finally looking at her. Her eyes were wide, desperate. "Grover, please don't do this." We can talk about it. I exhaled through my nose. We are talking about it, Evelyn. And all I've heard are lies and excuses. She stepped forward. I'll stop seeing him. I scoffed. That's not the point. Then what is the point? I met her gaze, my chest tight. The point is, you already made your choice. You chose him over and over again. You don't get to backtrack just because you got caught. Tears filled her eyes. I never wanted this. I let out a quiet, bitter chuckle. Yeah, neither did I. I grabbed my bag and walked past her. She reached for my arm, her touch desperate. Please just stay. Let's fix this. I looked down at her hand, at the same fingers that had once intertwined with mine so effortlessly. Now they felt foreign. I gently pulled away. You already broke it, Evelyn. And some things can't be fixed. I walked out of the house without looking back. Walking away should have felt like freedom, like I had broken the chains of betrayal and deceit, like I was reclaiming my life from the wreckage of our marriage. But as I stepped out into the night, duffel bags slung over my shoulder, all I felt was nothing, just emptiness. The streets were quiet, the distant hum of cars the only sound cutting through the silence. My feet moved on instinct, but I had no destination, nowhere to go. It was ironic. 12 years of marriage, and yet in the end, I had built nothing for myself. Everything had been ours. The house, the routines, the plans for the future. And now all of it was in ashes. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at the screen. No missed calls, no messages. Of course not. Evelyn wouldn't reach out. Not yet. She knew I needed space. Or maybe she was just waiting, calculating, figuring out how to spin this into something that didn't make her look as awful as she was. I dialed a number before I could think too much about it. After 3 rings, a groggy voice answered. Dude, it's past midnight. I exhaled. I need a place to crash. A pause. Then, Grover? What's going on? I clenched my jaw. I'll explain when I get there. Yeah, of course. Doors open. I hung up and started walking toward the only place I could think to go. Jasper's apartment. Jasper and I had been friends since college. He was the guy who stuck around when others drifted away. He was blunt, sometimes brutally so, but that's what I needed right now. No sugarcoating, no false hope, just the truth, as ugly as it was. By the time I got to his place, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving me exhausted. He opened the door in sweatpants and a ratty t-shirt, squinting at me like I was a ghost. Man, you look like hell. Feel like it too, I muttered, stepping inside. He shut the door behind me, arms crossed. All right, sit. Talk. I dropped my bag on the floor and sank onto his couch. The words didn't come right away. How do you explain something like this? How do you put betrayal into words when it still doesn't feel real? Finally, I sighed. Evelyn cheated on me. Jasper's expression hardened. No. I nodded. Yeah. Are you sure? I let out a humorless chuckle. She admitted it. His hands curled into fists. That's, God, Grover. I'm so sorry. He ran a hand down his face. I never liked her, man. Never trusted her. I shook my head. Don't do that. Don't act like you knew all along. He sighed. All right, fair. But still, I hated the way she treated you sometimes. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. I keep wondering if I missed the signs, if I should have seen it coming. Jasper grabbed a beer from the fridge, handed it to me, then sat down. That's the thing about love, man. It makes you blind. You don't see the cracks until the whole thing collapses on top of you. I took a sip, the cold bitterness barely registering. It's not just the cheating. It's that she was fine with lying to me, that she had been doing it for months. Jasper leaned forward. So what now? I let out a long breath. I don't know. You going back? I turned my head sharply. Hell no. He nodded approvingly. Good. You don't owe her anything. That's what I kept telling myself. But part of me couldn't help but think of the what-ifs. What if I had been a better husband? What if I had noticed sooner? What if I had fought harder for our marriage before it got to this point? Jasper must have seen it on my face, because he shook his head. Don't do that. This isn't on you. She said she didn't plan for it to happen. I muttered. Doesn't matter. She still let it happen. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I just don't know where to go from here. Jasper clapped a hand on my shoulder. Step 1, sleep. Step 2, divorce. I let out a dry laugh. That easy, huh? Look, I know it's not simple, but what's the alternative? You stay married to someone who already picked someone else over you. I hated how much sense he made. I stared down at the beer in my hands, my fingers tightening around the bottle. I don't even know if I can be angry anymore. I just feel empty. Jasper leaned back, stretching. That's normal. The anger comes later. I nodded slowly. Maybe he was right. Maybe the rage would come later, once the shock wore off. But deep down, I already knew this wasn't something I'd ever get over completely. Some betrayals leave scars too deep to ever fully heal. And I had a feeling this was one of them. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I closed my eyes, but my mind was still running a marathon, replaying every conversation, every moment that led me to this exact point. I was exhausted, but rest wouldn't come. The weight of betrayal sat heavy on my chest, making it impossible to drift into unconsciousness. Jasper had crashed on the other couch, but I could tell he wasn't sleeping either. Every now and then, I'd hear him shift, let out a deep sigh, or open the fridge to grab another beer. It wasn't just my life that had been thrown into chaos. My mess had bled into his space, too. But he didn't complain. He never did. That's why I came here. At some point, I must have dozed off, because I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing violently on the coffee table. I sat up with a start, heart pounding, disoriented by the early morning light streaming through the blinds. I reached for the phone, barely registering the time. 6:42 a.m. It was her. Evelyn's name flashed across the screen, and for a moment, I just stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen, torn between answering and throwing the damn phone across the room. Jasper groaned from the other couch. If you don't pick that up, I will. I exhaled sharply and pressed accept, bringing the phone to my ear. What? Silence. Then a shaky breath. Grover. Her voice sounded small, like she had barely slept either. Good, I thought. I made myself clear last night, I said, rubbing my temple. I need to see you, she whispered. I scoffed. You needed me when you were sneaking around behind my back? That's not fair. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, now we're talking about fair. She exhaled. Please, just meet me at the house. I need to talk to you in person. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to hang up, to cut her off completely, to let her sit in the mess she created. But a small, pathetic part of me still wanted answers. Closure. I'll be there in an hour, I said flatly, then hung up before she could say anything else. Jasper watched me, arms crossed. You sure you want to do that? No, I admitted. But I need to. He didn't argue, just nodded and threw me a clean shirt. At least go in there looking like you've still got a spine. I let out a dry chuckle. Appreciate it. The drive back home felt surreal. The roads were familiar, but nothing else was. This was the same route I'd taken hundreds of times. After work, after running errands, after meaningless moments that now felt like a lifetime ago. But today I wasn't coming home. Not really. That house wasn't mine anymore. It was a place filled with ghosts of what could have been, what should have been. When I pulled into the driveway, Evelyn was already outside, standing near the porch steps. She looked like a wreck, hair unbrushed, wearing one of my old sweaters, arms wrapped tightly around herself. If I didn't know any better, I might have felt sorry for her. But I did know better. I stepped out of the car, slamming the door harder than necessary. What do you want? She flinched. Can we go inside? I hesitated but followed her in. The house smelled the same, but it felt foreign. The furniture, the photos on the wall, even the damn coffee mugs in the sink. It was all familiar, but none of it belonged to me anymore. She sat on the couch, wringing her hands. I stayed standing. Finally, she spoke. I know you hate me. Pretty close. She swallowed. I deserve that. Then why am I here? Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something I hadn't before. Guilt. Real guilt. Not the kind you fake when you're caught, but the kind that comes when you realize you've ruined something you can never get back. I messed up, she admitted. I lost sight of what we had, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I never wanted to lose you. I clenched my jaw. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I don't know why I did it, she whispered. Because you wanted to, I said bluntly. Because whatever you were getting from him felt better than being faithful to me. She shook her head. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. Evelyn. My voice cracked with something raw. She wiped her eyes. I was lonely. I let out a bitter laugh. Lonely? You? I was the one working late so we could have the life you wanted. I was the one trying to make sure you were happy while you... I stopped myself before the words turned into something uglier. She sniffled. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. That's how it always goes, isn't it? I muttered. She looked at me, really looked at me, like she was trying to find the man she married underneath the wreckage. Can we fix this? I stared at her for a long time. You really think this is something we can just patch up? Like a hole in the wall? She swallowed hard. I want to try. I shook my head slowly. I can't. Her face crumbled, but I didn't let it affect me. I took a deep breath, exhaling through my nose. I want a divorce. The words hung between us, heavy, final. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Just silent devastation. I turned, walking toward the door. You can have the house, I said over my shoulder. But you don't get me. Not anymore. And this time, when I walked away, I didn't look back. The finality of my words echoed in my head long after I walked out of that house for the last time. I expected to feel more pain, more hesitation, more doubt. But as I stepped into my car and pulled away, something strange happened. I felt free. Not in the reckless, impulsive way people talk about when they make a terrible decision, no. This was different. This was a deep, undeniable relief, like I had been carrying something unbearably heavy for months, maybe even years, and I had finally put it down. Evelyn had been my past, my partner, my home. But she had also become my biggest source of pain, and I was done letting that pain define me. I didn't go back to Jasper's place. I didn't need a couch to crash on anymore. Instead, I drove. No destination, no plan, just the open road ahead of me and a feeling in my gut that told me whatever came next, it had to be better than what I was leaving behind. A week passed then too. The paperwork was filed. Evelyn didn't fight it. She knew she had lost me, and for once, she didn't try to manipulate the situation. Maybe she was exhausted too. Maybe she knew, deep down, that what we had was already gone. I got my own place. It wasn't much, just a small apartment downtown, but it was mine. The first thing I had done purely for myself in years. No compromise, no consideration for anyone else's needs. Just something that belonged to me. For the first time in a long time, I started focusing on myself. I went to the gym again, not to impress anyone, but because it felt good to move, to rebuild what I had let fall apart. I started reading books that had been sitting on my shelf for years, picking up hobbies I had abandoned when marriage took priority over personal growth. And the best part? I didn't feel lonely. I had been lonelier in that marriage than I ever was sitting in my new apartment with a book and a quiet mind. One evening, about a month after I left, I found myself sitting in a cafe, watching the world go by. I had always been too busy, too preoccupied to really see things before, but now I noticed everything. The way the sunset reflected off the windows, the way people laughed over their coffee, the way life just kept moving, even when you thought it would stop. That's when I met her. It wasn't some grand, cinematic moment. No dramatic music, no slow-motion eye contact. Just a simple exchange. She asked if she could borrow the chair at my table. I nodded. She smiled. And somehow, that small, unassuming moment became the start of something I never saw coming. Her name was Lillian. She was kind in a way that felt genuine, not performative. She didn't need to be the center of attention. She just was, And when we talked, it wasn't forced, wasn't calculated. It was easy. We spent hours in that cafe, laughing about nothing and everything. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Evelyn. I wasn't thinking about betrayal, about what I had lost, about what had been taken from me. I was thinking about right now. And that's when I knew I wasn't broken anymore. I had survived the worst of it. And I was finally ready to move forward. Not just away from my past, but towards something new.